What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday covering all the four major sports leagues, whether that be NHL, NFL, MLB, games, news, highlights, all that fun stuff. And Nick, in today's episode, obviously, it's going to be talking about preseason. Week one is officially over. There was games Friday night, obviously majority Saturday, and then two games Sunday to conclude. And Nick, there's a lot to talk about. A lot of rookies played, even some starters played. But I want to ask you first, because obviously I know where I'll probably go with my takes. I'm obviously as a Vikings fan. But what was your biggest takeaway from the preseason day one? Surprise you, disappoint you, surprise team, or just players? What was your biggest takeaway this weekend watching the games?
Just the fact how, and I know it's preseason, but how impactful all these rookies seem to be right away. And I'll tip my cap to McCarthy. I think he had, out of all the rookie stat lines, when you look at all the games, he definitely had the most impressive one. I think he probably played the most, but, he did the best with what he was given. Like, that's all you can do in these opportunities. He's fighting to try and take that starting spot this season, and he definitely strengthened his case a lot with the game he had. Who'd you guys play? The Raiders?
Yeah, Raiders.
Yeah, he had like 200 total yards, made a bunch of really good throws, looked really comfortable. So I know it's preseason, but he definitely strengthened.
I will say, yeah.
I'll let you go, though.
Since we're probably just going to get into it, since, you brought him up. When I look at J.J. McCarthy's performance, overall, we got a little bit of the full experience of what I expected, because in training camp, shout out to the Vikings beat writers. They do a very good job. Not sugarcoating anything. What he does good, his good days, his bad days. And obviously you're going to have a lot of those as a rookie. But they said probably his biggest flaw still is just the reliance on the arm strength. It is a strength because his arm strength is incredible, just the zip he has on the ball to get out completions. But sometimes he over-relies on that, and that was the pick where Jack Jones intercepted him, where he just relied on his arm strength without the footwork to try and fit a ball in that just wasn't there. So, you're going to see those. But then obviously the arm strength was on full display, hitting all the crosser routes, and then just, like you said, some beautiful deep balls on touchdowns. The second one was more so broken coverage, but the first one on the right hash, throwing it all the way across left to the left side of the end zone, that was incredible to see. And I think overall, it obviously, like you said, it's preseason. You're mostly throwing vanilla offense. They're throwing vanilla defense, but you're able to just make these throws that you're going to need to make. And overall, I was very impressed. I thought he made a lot of great decisions, but I still think there's no need to rush him. And Kevin O'Connell, like I mentioned before, has been brought up with quarterbacks that haven't been mentored right. And maybe, it wasn't, just the system. Maybe they just, could not have worked, but people just blame the quarterbacks. But deep down, the Redskins organization was a dumpster fire for a long time. And they rushed Dwayne Haskins out there. We saw what happened to him. He got thrown into the fire way too early into his career when that wasn't the plan. And then obviously, things went downhill for just that team as a whole, and the expectations for Dwayne, because the organization, and maybe it was Dan Snyder, just wanted to throw him in, and it was stupid. And he was also there for Johnny Manziel, another guy's career that, maybe he was just, too much of a party guy, was never going to work. But you never know until, you develop these QBs right. And, I'm not here to rush it. And hopefully, even the thing that'll be underlooked was Sam Darnold also had a great drive against the first-team Raiders defense. So I think Sam Darnold is still going to be the guy week one. But all I can say is, no matter really how well, unless Sam leads us to a Super Bowl, it's J.J. McCarthy's team after this year regardless. And I think just even learning, still getting reps in practice, getting reps against the Cleveland Browns defense this week, that'll be great. So overall, I'm excited to see what this team can be with J.J. McCarthy, Jefferson, Addison, when Hawkinson's back. But overall, it's just good to see the glimpse because obviously, he was the highlight, and, he did play the most, which was a credit to O'Connell just because he's obviously not going to be a starter. You might as well get as much reps as he can. But overall, just very exciting week, not just for JJ McCarthy, but for the rookies as the whole. Because there was really no bad performances. I would say if you were to grade them 1 through 6, the last person is probably just Drake May because he only played like one drive. And even then, he was still 2 for 3, 19 yards. So really nothing crazy, but nothing obviously terrible. So overall, all the rookies show a lot of promise, and we'll probably get into some of those guys next, which is I was probably most pleasantly surprised, I guess, with Bo Nix in yesterday's game because Nick, obviously, we haven't spent too much time on the Broncos this offseason, and rightfully so. I mean, they're still in a disastrous situation, and neither of us were quite necessarily high on Bo Nix, but if there was one guy that could make Bo Nix look competent, and like I said, it is preseason, vanilla offense, vanilla defense. He still looked good. He looked poised in the pocket, doesn't take a lot of sacks, can just make sometimes the right reads. And he only had really one bad throw that should have easily been a pick, but it wasn't. But he still threw a touchdown, looked for the most part solid and composed, and played a good amount of that game. And overall, gotta give him his credit. He, showed up and played probably even better than I expected. So overall, maybe the Broncos have their QB. Maybe, our boy Sam is lit, already has the Bo Nix jersey on the way. But who knows?
I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet he has that jersey on the way. And, I just want to go back to a point you made about McCarthy real quick that I didn't really touch upon yet. And when watching his highlights, and granted they're highlights, of course, so they're all going to be pretty good throws, but the highlights from that game, the ball looks really good coming out of his hand. It's a tight spiral.
He's got
shoots out of his hand. It looks very pro ready. And obviously, being a pro is much more than just can you throw a football good. Like there's so much mentally and just knowing as a quarterback, you have to know what everybody on the field is doing every single play. And so there's much more to it than that. But that might have been what I was most surprised at is just because we didn't get the chance to see that at Michigan. That was such a run-heavy, RPO type of offense. He was throwing the ball maybe like 20 times a game in big games and never really getting those, 300, 400-yard passing games. So in the NFL now, in a passing league, it's going to be much more on display, and I think that's where he's really going to be able to showcase his arm.
The thing is, I mean, that was something that like I said, we didn't get to see at Michigan a lot, but even coming out and just hearing from the Vikings guys, one of his biggest strengths was his arm strength and just the zip he has on the ball. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's good to hear. Obviously, we didn't see a lot, but, just because he was his head coach, Jim Harbaugh, said, like, after JJ left Michigan, he's in the draft process and, he's becoming the Chargers head coach, that JJ McCarthy was the best quarterback in this draft. And I think maybe he knew all along he had this potential, but there was just something like they didn't need to pass the ball 30, 40 times. That's not like a Jim Harbaugh offense. Michigan's offensive line, you have Blake Corum back there. You can just run the ball. And when we need JJ McCarthy, he'll hit those big time throws. We just don't need to see it a lot where like at USC, Caleb Williams is gunslinging it 50 times a game. And so, obviously that gave JJ McCarthy, whatever people want to say, like a run merchant or whatever, but I don't even know what to say. That just stupid. But I think like I said, one of his biggest strengths is going to be his arm strength. It's just hopefully he doesn't rely too much because that's where we see the interception possibility where they've been reworking his footwork. So that's a big thing. And on that throw, I know he's scrambling a little bit, but he's not even like. His feet aren't even facing the receiver. He's just kind of throwing it sideways, relying on the arm strength, and it just gets picked off. But he bounces back from that, and that's probably arguably my favorite thing about him. It's just his bounce back ability, not just here or at college, but even at training camp. When the Vikings reporters say he obviously as rookies you're not going to have great days all the time. You're going to have your bad days, and whenever he's had a bad day, he's responded very well the next day and just overall, giving the right answers. And I think he's a charming guy that just, can win the room over and, is a good leader. And, I can't wait to see him and Jefferson on the field together. And I know Jefferson was pumped on the sidelines, obviously, NFL Network had him interviewing for his big third quarter, where he was just kind of, carving up the Raiders. But, overall should be, very fun. Once he does get in, I still think that'll be the biggest question mark. But for now, I'm still riding with Sam Darnold to be the betting favorite. I think he's the more established. And, speaking of, we've talked about guys like Manziel, Haskins that were drafted into terrible situations. Darnold fits that perfectly. And he was with the New York Jets where his number one wide receiver was Robbie Anderson. So a terrible offensive line. And I think he's in his best situation now. And, if he has even just a decent year, he can, go get paid from a team that may need a quarterback next year, like the Giants. I think he's going to hopefully have a great season because similar to J.J. McCarthy, he has a great arm. And I think, it'll just be interesting. And I think these guys aren't afraid to sling it, where Kirk Cousins, I feel like he got out of it over the last couple of years, but he was a little bit more check down happy, where I just don't think we'll see that here. I think, it'll just be fun because there's no expectations to go out there. But I will say the biggest thing I still am concerned about is the secondary. Just with the Raiders' first team, I think when Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew was in, and Gardner Minshew having him as a backup is OP against second stringers. But I think the front seven will obviously be great. Nick, shout out Dallas Turner, got 2 pressures and a sack in the red zone. So he was making a huge impact against the Raiders. As he was getting run with the first team, do some guys being out, but secondary will be my biggest concern. And I am just hoping Stephon Gilmore has a visit today, that he signs, because that's a guy, Nick, last couple of weeks when we've talked about free agency corners, I've been slamming the table. We need some help back there. Just given the unfortunate situation that has happened with Mekhi Blackman tearing his ACL, Kyrie Jackson passing away. So hopefully we can just get some help back there, because there are just some question marks there. If we want to be at least really competitive and fight for a playoff spot, we got to get that secondary fixed. That'd be just my other complaint.
Yeah, Stephon would be huge for that. And one more point I want to turn on, because we're still on quarterbacks. And I know you mentioned, there weren't many bad rookie performances this weekend, but I kind of want to turn towards another, backup quarterback situation that isn't really looking good. And that's the Rams. And that's a team where Stafford, he's had his injury history, and I've heard reports that Jimmy Garoppolo there has not looked good. We just saw Stetson Bennett last night throw 4 picks against the Cowboys.
Game-winning drive, though. Game-winning drive. Maybe he's got that clutch.
I don't care, dude.
Maybe he's got that. I will say this.
They need to get that figured out, because you need a backup. And when, especially a guy like Matt Stafford, who can get hurt, you need that reliable second option, not Jimmy Garoppolo or 4-pick Bennett.
That's just one thing, Nick. I know you're a lot higher on the Rams than I am, and I like the Rams. They, before the playoffs, when the playoff bracket came out, no games are played, I picked them to win the Super Bowl. They won me my bread. I have a lot of confidence in Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, but they're a team that I also, after they won the Super Bowl, added Bobby Wagner. I was like, this team is going to fall off. And they did. And I thought they were going to continue that fall off, and they surprised me and kind of bounced back and won a lot more games. But they're also a team that 1 or 2 injuries away, the season's over. And I feel like that's a team that, could be one of 2 ways. But like you said, Matt Stafford's injury history, he's often banged up, a lot of concussions. Cooper Kupp, he looks great, but he's still, his injury history, he can be banged up. And Puka Nacua is obviously dealing with some injury. He should be good, for week 1. But, it's just those that scare me, because if any one of those 3 guys go down the offense, they're kind of screwed. And I think Kyron Williams is obviously a great running back. I think their offense going to need to carry, because their defense is just really suspect to me. But, I think we're just relying on their offense too much. And I think asking Stafford to stay healthy for a full 17, Kupp and Puka Nacua, because people forget Puka Nacua was an injury. His injury history in college was a lot. He was injured, always banged up, and he stayed healthy last year. And when he's on the field, he obviously showed what he can be. But he was a guy that was banged up a lot at college. So I think relying on all three of these guys that have a big injury history, it's just going to be too much for me. And that's kind of what has scared me away from picking them as a solidified playoff team. But if they're on the field, obviously they can be top 7 offense, and if their defense can hold, be a really good team. But there's too many question marks with this team, and like we saw, that only was more concerned yesterday, where Stafford has to miss a game or two, even if against one of the weaker teams. I think they'd be heavy underdogs.
I agree with your points, but at the same time, I feel like that's the case for so many NFL teams. Like where if obviously if your quarterback goes down, you're probably screwed. And if one of your top, like we saw with the Vikings last year, they lost their quarterback and their number one receiver for 7 games, and it kind of just screwed them because they were.
I will say though,
until they lost.
I will say, but I think when you lost Kirk Cousins, your season's over. But like I'm just saying, like obviously if you lose Matt Stafford for your 7+ games, I'm not blaming the Rams if they miss the playoffs. But if he misses 1 or 2 games just because he gets a lot of head injuries and concussions, those 1 or 2 games can make a huge difference where a team can't rally around. And to the Vikings' credit, when Jefferson went down, I think they started off 6-0 without him. They went on like that insane 6-game winning streak with Kirk, leading the way, and they were like 3-0 and beating good teams like the Packers and 49ers. I think the Vikings are actually a team where the injuries at the end eventually became too much, but the team went from 1-4 to 6-4 without Jefferson. And then obviously, then you bring in Josh Dobbs and, you get that spark for a little bit, but it just, wore out on them. But I feel like obviously if you lose your quarterback for a whole season, but it's just like those 1 or 2 games where I think the Rams, if they're fully healthy for a full year, are like a 9-10 win team. If they lose him, I almost have 0 to none confidence. And if you're playing a really good team where like you might be 51%, but Cooper Kupp or Puka Nakua's not going, that brings you down. So it just scares me more so with the Rams because they're one of the most top-heavy teams in the league.
Okay. It's definitely easier to come back, or not come back, but rally around and continue to win losing a receiver as opposed to a quarterback. Like the quarterback is the franchise. So if Cooper Kupp or Nakua were to go down, I would like their odds a lot better than if Stafford, say he goes down for 4 weeks with a head injury.
Yeah.
They'd probably go
like 4 weeks
for that. Then,
yeah.
But
I'm more so to say like 1 or 2 weeks, there's just no shot given how close the NFC is. That's even just still a big blow. So, and I get what you mean, but even to the Vikings card last year without Kirk Cousins for those first 3 games, they won. Rallying around, Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall. So, I'm not going to, fully, I think they're an example of a team that can, rally. And, maybe the Rams can too, but just they've always been a team the last couple of years that's just been super top heavy. So it just scares me to just see, stuff like yesterday where that's your backup, given the injury history, it can be concerning. Whereas a team like, there are, certified playoff teams like, just can't think of the one off the top of my head. But, I feel like if the Chiefs needed to turn to, and they did a couple of years ago, they need to turn to Matt Moore to win games in their Super Bowl run. He had the ability to do that just given the system. So, we'll see. But hopefully, obviously just for the Rams' sake, they can stay healthy.
Yeah, that was the point I was ultimately trying to make is like, they need to fix their backup situation because they don't have a good backup right now. Both backups do not look good. So, and that's we like you just said, we've seen it in years past. Last year with the Bengals, where having a good backup can be so important to your team. Where you can, if you don't have one, it can literally just end your season right then and there. And luckily, the Bengals have, I think, a pretty solid backup in Jake Browning. So he ended up, winning them some games, putting up some solid numbers. They didn't make the playoffs ultimately just because, the difference between Joe Burrow and Jake Browning is about $50 million. So that still makes a
But
difference.
shout out Jake Browning.
Yeah.
I thought we beat my team, so I don't like that. But with that being said, obviously, a lot to take away. Some other notable shout outs was obviously Caleb Williams, looking really solid in his preseason debut, made some great throws, had a big run when we need to, and overall the Bears ended up thrumping the Bills 33-6. But wasn't really much to take away. Josh Allen only played like 1 or 2 series, so overall just kind of we'll see. Maybe we're sipping the Bears Kool-Aid. More people are hyping on the train, but overall, I liked what I saw. But how much key takeaway will be the biggest question, because really, I'm also just looking at week 1 now. Like, all right, is this like for real? Are all these quarterbacks legit, or are all of them just bust? We'll see. But that was good for Bears fans just to see Caleb Williams looking good out there. There's a lot of good to take away. Justin Fields made his Taylor debut, played all right, I thought. Made some good throws. Just unfortunate. It seemed like every drive they had, stalled in like a big sack. But overall, Russell Wilson didn't get any run there. But I thought, a lot of the QBs played well. Michael Penix showed some great throws. And I'm really excited just to see, how many of them end up playing in the regular season, how many don't. It's just going to be exciting to see these guys take the field. And obviously, the defensive studs as well. My dog, I already mentioned it, Dallas Turner, racking up a big sack. Can't wait for him to get some good run. And overall, a Vikings kicker hitting a game-winning field goal. That's not on my bingo card as a Vikings fan. Used to them whiffing it. But, overall, got to enjoy the good, even some preseason. So it was fun. But overall, Nick, I know we're already ready for the joint practices because, like I said, that's really where they're going at it. We're going to see some fights on videos, I bet, pop up of teams going at it. Tomorrow, we're going to go see the Eagles-Patriots, so we won't have a football video ready for you guys, but we'll have, obviously just a lot of content to come at you Wednesday.
Check out the TikTok because we'll probably be uploading highlights from that on TikTok. So if you don't follow it already, follow the Sports Talk on Tap TikTok, and maybe you'll see some clips. Maybe we can get lucky, get a few interviews with players if they let us. That'd be pretty cool.
That could be you. I'll be like, sorry, Drake May. I know you wanted to come to Minnesota, but you're stuck here. Maybe one day. Maybe one day we'll bring you in, buddy. But, overall, should be very fun. Eagles, Patriots, joint practice. Teams close by. So, can the Patriots, send a message after that week 1 defeat last year? That'll be, something funny to see. But, yeah, should be very intense for a lot of teams. And obviously, we'll be back Wednesday to recap all the fun that happens in these joint practices. And then also preseason, shortly after, I believe the Patriots again play the Eagles Thursday night. We'll see, obviously I anticipate, Drake May out there, hopefully a little bit longer. So, should be very fun. It'll just be exciting to see. But with that being said, let us know in the comments your guys' biggest takeaways from preseason week 1. What players surprised you, disappoint you, or just teams as a whole? And let us know, how excited you are that the season's coming around. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and we'll catch you next one. Peace.